This symbol at the entrance to W. Somerset Maugham's villa is a Moorish shield against evil. It appears as an ornament and talisman in such famous books of his as of Human Bondage, Cakes and Ale, and The Moon and Sixpence. Cap-Ferrat, where his house stands, reaches out from the French Riviera to the Mediterranean. Maugham's life in literature and in drama goes back to the greats of modern English letters: Kipling, Shaw, Arnold Bennett, Max Beerbohm, and scores of others. Here Maugham converses with his friend Alan Pryce-Jones, former editor of the London Times Literary Supplement and now a London drama critic.
It's just 30 years, Willie, since I first came and stayed with you in this house. And I suppose that 30 years ago, you were just about the same age that I am now. Have you found that life became more interesting, more fascinating, between, say, 50 and 80?
I should say that, on the whole, I don't know much more about life than I knew 30 years ago. After all, remember that 30 years ago, I was already an elderly man.
But I'm conscious of that myself. But I'm hoping still that one does learn a bit more in the decades to come.
No, I think probably as one reaches my advanced age, one cares much less than one did when one was young for what other people think of one.
You have just made a long journey, I know, through the Far East. Now, did you take a notebook with you? Did you make any plans for using that journey?
No, indeed not. When the press discovered that I was going to take this journey, from all sides, I had munificent offers to write about it. But I refused everything. I just wanted to go to enjoy myself. But for some reason, the press described it as a sentimental journey. It wasn't any more sentimental than going down to Brighton for a weekend. Really.
Did you take a lot of books with you? Do you now, for example, read a great deal?
Travel with a lot of books. Years ago, 35, 40 years ago, I used to travel with a huge book bag full of books. And, in fact, I called a story the book bag. At that time, all my stories were published in the Cosmopolitan by Ray Long. And the book bag was the only story I wrote he ever refused. He wrote to me and said, "I've gone further with you than with any other author, but when it comes to incest, I have to draw the line."
It must have been very difficult, wasn't it, to decide which form to adopt when you had an idea for a plot?
Oh, no, I don't think it was at all. I'd come to you already with a certain shape, and you use them either to make into a novel or short story or play.
But sometimes you varied a little bit, didn't you? I remember at the beginning of Cakes and Ale, you said that you'd first thought of it as a very short story, and then it turns into this wonderful novel. I suppose that happened, did it in the act of writing, or...
In the act of writing, yes. As one wrote, one thought more and more things. It was easy, really. I haven't ever written anything so easily or with so much pleasure.
How about Human Bondage? Was that a very difficult book to write?
Well, you see, it was written nearly 40 years ago. More probably, because I remember I corrected the proofs in Flanders at the beginning of the First World War. So it must have been written 2 or 3 years before that. And in that particular case, I had recollections which tormented me, and I did what I always do in such a case. I wrote them out in a book, and after that they ceased to torment me. Simple.
Yes, but it's such a wonderfully complex, large book. I wonder whether that came straight through your natural processes of invention and recollection, or whether it involved a lot of working out.
Oh, I don't think so. I think it came straight through.
When you were a young man, you were a medical student and then a doctor, weren't you?
I was indeed, and I have always thought that during those 5 years I was at St. Thomas's Hospital, I learnt everything I know about human nature. Because normally, as we know, people wear masks, but when they're ill and afraid to die, they drop the mask and you see them as they are.
As far as American books go, aren't I right in thinking that you put Moby-Dick and Huck Finn and Leaves of Grass above all the others?
Yes, I think so. I think so. And accepting what the Belgian tolls is extremely near.
You are an admirer of Hemingway, are you?
I'm a great admirer of Hemingway. I've read, I think, all his short stories and all his novels, and I think he is a very good writer indeed, and he's always readable. You know, some books are excellent without being readable.
Yes,
Did you notice that?
How about William Faulkner?
Well, I only know his short stories, which I like. Like they're good, but I haven't read his novels.
What is interesting is the absolute divergence of opinion between Faulkner and yourself in one respect. Because you've lived most of your life out of your own country, and he's lived most of his in the state of Mississippi. Do you regret having lived so much abroad?
Well, you see, I never really had a home because I was made an orphan at a very early age, and I've been either hustled around or gone about places of my own free will all over the world as long as ever I can remember.
And you don't have the feeling of having, so to speak, cut yourself off from your grassroots by living in the south of France rather than in living in the south of Great Britain?
Oh, that is entirely different. If I wouldn't have ever settled here if I hadn't realized that my writing career was coming to an end.
Well, I don't believe your writing career ever comes to an end.
It has come to an end.
But I shall believe that when I see it. Do you ever suffer from self-doubt? Or do you know from the beginning that you can do just what you want?
Oh, no. The first writing is unsatisfactory, and I write it again. I generally write it 3 times. Until I've reached the point where I say to myself, it may be all wrong, but it's the best I can do.
And you do this by hand, do you? Write with a pen?
All by hand, yes.
When you were at the height of your output, did you enjoy writing fiction as much as writing theatre, for example?
Yes, I think so. You know, it was awfully hard in those days to get a play produced. I mean, I'm speaking of 50 years ago and more, because a theatre was in the hands of 3 or 4 men who wrote a play one every year, and for an outsider to come in was extremely difficult.
But you didn't remain an outsider for long.
Well, I don't know about that. For about 15 years, I'd written plays that no manager would accept, and then, when I was 34, one of these plays was accepted by pure accident. Instead of lasting for 6 weeks, it lasted over a year, and within 3 or 4 months I had and 4 plays running in London.
Which is your own favourite among them?
Oh, certainly The Circle. And I still think is the best play I wrote, and I think the public in general are agreed on that point.
But if you like writing plays so much, why did you stop writing them?
Well, I didn't stop until I was 60 years old, you must remember. And I had come to the conclusion that plays depend largely, the sort of plays I was writing are plays designed to interest and amuse, depend on the circumstances of the day. And that means that in order to write them, you have to live the life of the day. Well, at the age of 60, I felt I couldn't. And so I decided to write 4 more plays and stop. And that's exactly what I did.
You've known what's called everybody on both sides of the Atlantic, and I suppose all over the world, for a long time. Are there any of your contemporary writers that you look back to with special admiration, like, for example, Max Beerbohm or Arnold Bennett or Kipling?
Well, you know, there's certain space between admiration and affection, isn't there?
Yes.
And I admired Rudyard Kipling very much indeed, but I can't say I had any affection for him. And I think it's really tragic that now, owing to political circumstances, he's entirely neglected. As perhaps you know, a little while ago, his daughter was upset because no one's buying his books anymore, and asked me if I would make a selection of the best stories and write a preface. I did that, and I did put in a number of stories that were extremely readable, but nobody would read them. And it's a political affair. You see, he is an imperialist. Imperialism is out of fashion now, but he is the best short story writer that either England or the United States have produced, and eventually must come back.
At least he has strong support from yourself and from T.S. Eliot, and that gives his reputation something to rely on. And now, shall we talk about Max Beerbohm for a moment?
Well, he was also an old friend, but he, as you know, produced extremely little. Last time I saw him, just before he died, he said to me, "I love to draw, but to write has always been a torture to me."
Did you find his conversation very amusing?
He was charming. He wasn't awfully amusing, he was charming.
And how about some of the American writers? For example, Sinclair Lewis. You must have known him very well, didn't you?
I did indeed. He was an intimate friend of mine, and I'd known him for years. He used to come to London a good deal, and he would lunch with me perhaps 2 or 3 times a week. And he was awfully good company. And eventually, of course, he returned to the United States. And when he arrived in New York, the importers all came on board and asked him what he thought about England. And he said, well, the English novelists are lousy and their cocktails are warm. Well, I didn't in the least mind his saying that the novelists were lousy, but I did resent his saying the cocktails were warm, because he had drunk a great many in my house with, as far as I could judge, a great appreciation.
Have you moved much among painters?
Well, I have lived among painters, but of course years ago, and I've had my portrait painted by head sculptured over and over again until I'm blue in the face, and I enjoy their company.
The trouble, of course, with some contemporary painters is that they may make one literally blue in the face. You've got a lovely portrait, on the other hand, haven't you, of Graham Sutherland's?
Yes. That was a good one. And, several painters.
And the Gerald Kelly portrait I loved. Sir Gerald Kelly did a lovely one of you years ago.
That was a good one. I wonder if you would like me to tell you about Marie-Laurence.
Yes.
Who wrote to me one day and said to me, I'd like to paint a portrait of you. And I wrote back and said I'd be extremely flattered, but I thought I ought to remind her that I wasn't a young man with great, slow, eyes and pink cheeks and a red mouth, but an old gentleman with wrinkles. To which she answered, I don't mind about the wrinkles, but don't come in a coat, because I don't know how to paint a coat. And so I went in a dressing gown, and I sat to her for 4 days, and she told me the whole story of her life, and I had a wonderful time. And at the end, she looked at the canvas, and she said, you know, people always complain that my portraits aren't like the cities, and I can't tell you how little I care. And she took the canvas off the easel and said, there's a present for you. And I have it here upstairs. Only, she's a painter, a young man with beautiful black eyes, a big and white complexion, and red lips.
The picture of Charles Strickland, which you gave in The Moon and Sixpence, suggests that you know a great deal about the processes of painting. Have you ever painted yourself?
No, I haven't got any gifts in that direction at all.
Have you found that your taste altered much with the years? That's to say, people like Picasso and so forth?
But enormously. I remember that 50 years ago, more, I was in Paris, and I was taken by Gerald Kelly, who afterwards became the president of the Royal Academy, to see the first collection of the French Impressionists. And we looked at them, and I found them absolutely horrible. And I couldn't imagine how anyone could think that was good painting. And then the years passed one by one, and one got used to them, and saw their originality and their beauty in one thing and another. And I have several of them in the house now.
And then how about music? Does that mean a great deal to you?
I don't know if I could honestly say a great deal. I like to listen to music. I'm particularly fond of opera, and I have my favorite operas. And I think my favorite opera of all is The Meistersinger. And I've always thought I would like to die to the strains of the last act but one in that.
Yes.
Lovely music, enchanting music.
Looking around the whole of life as we've been doing, going from one thing to another, are you conscious of any great gap? I remember once Harold Nicholson saying to me that he very much regretted he had never known anything about sport. I remember you being very good at tennis.
It was fairly good. I left it off because I used to have the semi-pros who used to come from Monte Carlo, and they liked to come because they got good tea and drinks. And I heard one of them say to another, considering his age, he doesn't play at all a bad game. And I said to myself, that isn't enough. And so from that day on, I never played a game.
What do you think has brought you the greatest happiness? Travel, or people, or ideas, or your work?
Oh, no. After all, I've liked a good many people. I've disliked a good many more. And my greatest satisfaction is to think of a story and write it as I want to see it in my mind's eye.
Could you give any advice to a young writer at all which would help him to do something of the same sort?
Oh, I could certainly. I should have said, throw yourself in the early of life. It doesn't matter how many mistakes you make, or what unhappiness you have to undergo. It's all your material.
But would you advise him to do something like joining a school of creative writing?
Oh, no, that's the far thing I'd ever advise him to do. I think his school is life.
I should have thought it was very difficult, I agree, to learn in a school of creative writing, but they do exist, these schools.
I know they do all over the place. I believe them to be entirely useless.
And you would think that the writer ought to be a fairly well-lit character. I mean, he ought not to shut himself up.
Oh, certainly not. He ought to... No, they write to me all the time asking me for advice, and I always give the same answer. Don't wait for experience to come to you. Go out after experience. Your experience is your material.
When you turn back towards the great novel writers of the past, have you been, on the whole, fairly faithful to one or two of them? Let's say Voltaire or Goethe, whom I know you admire very much.
Well, you know, Voltaire is an extraordinarily interesting example of the fate of a writer. He wrote reams and reams of stuff, and he lives on one short novel that he wrote. Everything else has been forgotten.
Now, thinking of Candide, I suppose.
Yes.
And
a charming little novel.
Didn't you write somewhere that before you started on a novel, you always reread Candide?
I may have said that. I think it's possible. And there was probably a certain amount of truth in it. I've always looked upon it as an enchanting little book, extremely humorous and full of good sense and human nature.
How do you feel about the great Russians, Tolstoy, say, or Dostoevsky?
Well, I suppose everybody agrees that the best novel that has ever been written is Tolstoy's War and Peace. It was a colossal novel. It took him years to write, and his unfortunate wife had to write it out in longhand 7 times.
Yes,
she frequently tried to commit suicide, but she didn't succeed. It was only natural in the circumstances.
Do you still get pleasure out of these great masterpieces?
No, but look, I can't go on reading them. I've read all the great novels of the world, perhaps 3 or 4 times. And the only one now I continue to read is Proust.
I suppose he is almost inexhaustible.
Inexhaustible.
It's funny he's had no influence on writing in English.
Oh, none whatever. He was a unique creature, a rather unpleasant man, I should think, but an extraordinarily interesting writer.
Are there other writers who are who quite unlike ourselves, whom we also esteem?
Well, I suppose you're referring to Henry James.
That is a possibility.
Whom I used to know and liked. And I do admire him, but I don't think he knew anything about life whatever.
Did he talk as he writes?
Exactly, yes, exactly.
It must have been rather a trying experience sometimes.
I think the writers who under the impression that they're writing a novel, write social documents, are extremely mistaken.
Yes, I see that, including some of the most distinguished writers of our time.
Exactly, yes. Because what they're going to write is going to be out of date in an extremely short while. One of the hopes of every author who's written a great deal, I should say, was to hope that he won't be entirely forgotten after his death. And the social document is an entirely ephemeral business.
Do you regard yourself as a writer who teaches people, or as a writer who observes them? I mean, do you feel, so to speak, detached from the effect of your books, or do you want to make a certain specific impact on the people who read them?
Oh, I don't think so. I think I've always written to interest and amuse myself. And as to teaching people, it has never entered my head for a minute.
But you probably have taught them without meaning to. For example, a book like The Razor's Edge. I should have thought that was a kind of teaching book. It seems to me that you make some wonderful comments on life in the course of it.
I'm glad you think like that. I wrote it because it pleased me to write it. And the hero of that particular book is called Larry. And since then, I've had hundreds of letters from people asking me to meet him.
Fascinating. But talking about this matter of teaching, did you form a pattern of life? Did you decide how your life ought to be organized, for example, from the very word go?
Oh, I don't think that. I look upon myself as a slave of accidents. And as I look back, I'm appalled at all the mistakes I made in life. Terrible mistakes all the time. And the advantage of being a writer is that you are able to use your mistakes for copy.
But if you look forward now to the years which lie ahead, what sort of plans have you got for them?
Oh, well, you see, at my very advanced age, I know that I haven't got very much longer to live. And I feel that my life hangs on a thread, and the thread may break any moment. Well, I'm perfectly resigned to that. And so far as the future is concerned, I want to live the sort of life I live now.
This was a conversation between W. Somerset Maugham, master teller of tales, and his friend Alan Pryce-Jones, a London drama critic. This program was produced as a special project by the NBC Television Network.